Welcome back to Sunday Supplement. Welcome back to James, Craig and Dom. Let's focus on what is turning into a dramatic battle at the bottom of the Premier League, with both Tottenham Hotspur and West Ham United winning. Let's focus on Tottenham Hotspur first of all. In the Sunday Times, unconvincing, ugly, but after, wait for it, 118 days, Spurs finally win. Dom, it has finally happened. It's taken nearly 4 months. They've won. It is late in the season, but are they finally showing that fight that they need to maybe avoid the drop?
Sort of. I thought the game against Brighton was huge. I thought that how that finished for them, that could have been a massive lift in the season, and to throw it away, to throw 2 points away, sort of suggested the fragility. That must have been excruciating for the supporters yesterday. Even for us listening on from, everybody was raising eyebrows, like still 0-0, still 0-0. I think they're in a horrendous position. I know that might seem an obvious thing to say, but when you have a sequence what they've had with 118 days without winning, there has to be some form of recompense, and I think they're going to pay the price. I think.
James, just picking up on the fact that it's 118 days, Tom Allnut in the Sunday Times sums it up perfectly. Astronauts have gone to the far side of the moon and back since Tottenham last won in the Premier League, and this victory felt hugely significant for morale. What do you think it would have done for them psychologically, even though they probably heard on their phones, via their phones and via text messages, that West Ham had nicked it at the end?
It had that final day feel to it, because both teams were playing at the same time, and they went ahead, and then West Ham were pegged back, and then West Ham scored again in stoppage time. So that might have taken a little bit of the edge off. But no, it's huge. I mean, I was at that Brighton game, and there were Spurs fans in tears near the press box when the final whistle went. There weren't boos, there wasn't a hostility. It was just sort of dumbfound disbelief at what they were watching, that they finally stirred some energy and some passion, some quality in their play, to then go and concede in the last minute. So this will have a big effect. It will, not necessarily suggesting that De Zerbi needs buy-in, but I mean it will help with those players learning the new methods and the new plans that De Zerbi has for that team. But every time there's a bit of positivity, it seems to come with a bit of negativity for Spurs, and of course they've lost more players to injury. We don't know how bad they are, but Solanke, Seamans. I mean, Xavi Seamans, in many ways, he was sort of the poster boy for a failed season, really. He was a player. We were talking about recruitment earlier. They missed out on Eberechi Eze and Morgan Gibbs-White. They signed Xavi Seamans right at the end of the window for, I think it was 65 million euros, not had a great season, never been able to get himself going. He then scores that fantastic goal against Brighton, which of course is then undone. Then he's building on that in the Wolves game, and now he's come off injured again. It just feels as though every single time there's anything positive for Spurs to cling to, suddenly something drags them back in, and they're running out of time. But at least they've got that, and players, but at least they've got that monkey off their back. They've beaten one of the worst teams in Premier League history, 1-0, who were already relegated and been relegated for some time. But you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And Simmons was the one who looked like he was just taking on that main character energy, who was embracing the fight, who seemed to have the leading man syndrome, if you like. So to lose him, and he was brilliant against Brighton last week, and that goal at the very end of Brighton, how significant that'll be. De Zerbi came out afterwards and said it felt like a defeat. He was so down about it. I think it should have actually been the opposite, because for once we'd actually seen some evidence of fight and cohesion in the play. Then I had to laugh. De Zerbi said during the week he'd been showing them videos of better times. Now, who was on the videos? Hoddle, Waddle and Gaza. I mean, how far back do you have to go to unearth the better times at Spurs? But they've won yesterday, but they've beaten Wolves. Come on, relegated Wolves. They've won once all year, and you look at the table now and you do the maths and you see the fixtures they've got remaining. They're going to have to win 2 out of the last 4, I think, to stand any chance of staying up. And they just won't do that. I don't think they can do that, especially not now. They've lost Simmons, they've lost Solanke. So for me, looking at that, and you compare it with the feel-good and the momentum West Ham have got, and all of a sudden the London Stadium feels like a good place to play. for once, you know, it seems like there's a connection between those on the pitch and those in the stands. That's been evident for a while now. Spurs' revival, 4 points in the last 2. I think it's come too late. They've left themselves too much to do.
If they go, this is as big a story as Leicester winning the league. 100%. They won the Europa League 12 months ago. They were in the Champions League final 7 years ago. It's extraordinary. Tottenham, that stadium, that unbelievable stadium that's the envy of everybody, with the infrastructure that they should have and the potential for them to be relegated. My word, it's colossal.
Yeah, it's been nearly 50 years now, hasn't it, that Tottenham Hotspur have been in the top division. Just looking at yesterday, James, the Sunday Telegraph, John Percy was at Molineux, and there's a kind of a timeline there. At one stage, they were 4 points off safety. Then they were out of the relegation zone altogether, as it stands, those 3 famous words. Yeah. And then by the end of the game, they're back in to that relegation zone. There's the timeline there in the Sunday Telegraph. Mentally and psychologically, I know we keep going back to that because it feels like that's what everyone is talking about now, that's what it's going to take for any club to get out of the mess that they're in just now. But the fact that they've been in the relegation zone, having won, and they're still there, what is that going to do? Because it's another week that they're in the relegation zone, looking ahead to another big game. And West Ham United, of course, play before them next weekend.
Well, but it depends how you look at it. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at the table, it's another psychological blow, but they have to focus on the fact that they've won a game of association football, which is not something that they've done very often. They have to focus on that, and they have to believe in the principles and the plans that De Zerbi's putting in place is starting to generate something. You know, the performance against Brighton, although they didn't win the game, was one of their best of the season. Now, OK, the bar's on the floor for their standard of play, but still, there was something there to get behind. They've now got the 3 points to show for it. Perhaps not, from what I've read and from what I've seen, not as good a display probably at Wolves. They did have to battle and actually for periods of the second half, Wolves looked probably the more likely team to score. But they've got the win. They have to take the positives that they've generated and try and bring that forward. But you can tell how brittle it is because of the tricks that they're trying to use to generate some self-belief. The social media, rallying the fans together before the game, almost the team bus arrival, fans lining the streets, even things like getting the non-playing players in the matchday squad down in the dugout, naming James Maddison on the bench last weekend against Brighton when by all accounts he wasn't really fit enough to play, but to get him involved.
Advertising for a psychologist.
Yeah, when the players were coming off, advertising for the psychologist. When the players are coming off, Basuma and Bentancur still in their kit, in the dugout, cheering them on. Vicario wasn't in the matchday squad against Brighton, just a row behind them, cheering them on. Romero, conspicuously up in the stands, not down with the squad. Maybe we'll leave that one for another day. But the fact that they're trying to use all these tricks, get everyone together, unite the squad behind this single goal, just shows you how fragile it all is. You wouldn't need to be doing that if there was that kind of confidence and inherent self-belief in the squad already.
Craig, the fact that they're getting a tune now under Roberto De Zerbi, and many people, and Dom said maybe it's too late, they're running out of time, they're running out of players, but does it highlight even more the mismanagement above the managerial role at Tottenham Hotspur, why they're in this position?
Absolutely, it comes back to that, this spiral in which they found themselves goes back beyond Diego Toro, goes back beyond Thomas Frank even. But the biggest problem Tottenham have got, and they've given themselves a chance now by bringing De Zerbi in, it's the target they're chasing. It's moving and it's getting bigger. They're trying to chase down 3 teams who are playing well, 3 teams who've got momentum, 3 teams who are winning games. You looked at Nottingham Forest take apart a good Sunderland team, a really disciplined Sunderland team. We've got a fantastic home record. Forest went there on Sunday night and Friday night, and took them to pieces. Forest aren't going down, not with a player like Morgan Gibbs-White. You look at Leeds and the feel good around them at the moment, playing in an FA Cup semi-final this afternoon, won at Manchester United a couple of weeks back, got players in form, crucially attacking players, West Ham as well, Jared Bowen, again yesterday, Callum Wilson, who's scoring goals. So I think Tottenham's biggest problem, as much as a lot of it is internal, at the point at which they've finally won a game, and they've finally started to employ those psychological tricks and look as if they've got to act together in some level, the target they're chasing down is just getting bigger and bigger, and that is why they've left themselves too much to do.
But also, you mention the bigger picture, you know, that is the root of all this. That Spurs, there was a sale that was effectively very, very close to happening of Tottenham for about £3.5 billion. And that fell through, and they're left with owners who essentially don't want to be there, as much as they publicly say they do, and that they're in it for the long term, and you know, we want to take the club forward, and saying all the right things. But this is an ownership that doesn't have a vision of where they want to take the club. And to me, that is the root of all of this. It's why it's felt so rudderless. It's why they've lurched from one manager to another, and the playing staff and the standards have kind of dropped. And there's not a clear blueprint about where they want to go as a club and how they're going to get there. And it's created this real vacuum that has sucked in these players and taken the fans to a place where they don't know what the club represents anymore, what the club wants to be, where they want to go. Igor Tudor came in as an interim manager, and after one game when they lost to Arsenal, he's in the press conference publicly saying, what is the goal of this club? He got it. He only needed a week to work it out. But he really got to the heart of the problem. And until Spurs work that out, it's difficult to see a route back to being one of the traditional big six that we all expect them to be. I mean, it's existential if they go down. Financially, philosophically, if you like, you know, God only knows what happens to them if they go down to the Championship. So this is incredibly huge for them. They're not in a good place to bounce straight back if they were to go down.
Dom, Craig mentioned it before about not only Spurs showing fight, but at a time when there are three other teams who are more than capable of showing a bit of fight. We've seen Leeds United, we've seen Forest, as Craig mentioned there, winning 5-0 at Sunderland. Let's talk about West Ham United, because in the Mail on Sunday, their headline is "Irons prove metal on a day of drama." And particularly one nice little line from Nathan Salt: "This West Ham side are not mentally fragile, not like Tottenham have proven to be." Do you think that what they're showing is going to be enough to keep them in the Premier League?
I think the work that Nuno Espirito Santo has done in this calendar year has been incredible, because there was a point people were debating whether they would actually finish bottom when they lost to Wolves, didn't they? Wolves beat them 3-0 just after Christmas. They looked like they were going to finish dead last. So to have them out of the relegation zone now and everything in their favour has been incredible. They also have the fans have got a belligerence about them. It's kind of sort of reminiscent of Everton when Everton were in that situation. The fans just refused to countenance the idea that they would go down. The fans just basically made it clear to the players, "You're not getting relegated. We'll get you over the line." And they made Goodison like a bear pit for games. They won games that they shouldn't have done. And I think West Ham can, I know everybody talks about the stadium and it not being, having the soul that it should do, but it's got that bite about it. And I'm just not sure that Tottenham have got the same sort of, and this isn't a criticism of Tottenham, I just think it's different fan bases, and I think West Ham just might be more inclined for the fight.
James, Dom makes a great point there, because in Ivan Speck's piece in the Sunday Telegraph, he says the bond between the West Ham fans and their team, irrespective of their continuing disdain towards those running the club, might be enough to stave off relegation. How important are those fans going to be? Because we always hear about this division there seems to be, not between the fans and the team, but between the fans and what's happening above managerial positions and the board. So with that in mind, they have completely focused, haven't they? And some people have said we weren't expecting the fans to do that, because there has been that notion that there has been a bit of a division between them and the board. But yet we're in a position now where the London Stadium is absolutely bouncing, which we don't always say, do we?
No, we don't. And I don't know if Karen Brady stepping down is you know, has helped that situation in some way. But I mean, it'll be Nuno Espirito Santo's greatest achievement if he can make the London Stadium an intimidating place to go. I mean, let's not forget, Tottenham looked at moving there before they built their stadium. And Daniel Levy took one look at the whole project. And you know what he said about that stadium, if you want to make it a success? knock it down. He said, you have to knock it down. It's an athletic stadium. You'll never make that an intimidating, proper, authentic football experience. You have to knock it down and rebuild it. Now, obviously, things went a different way and West Ham moved in there, but it's always had to overcome that perception, and it's always been a very difficult place to generate that kind of intimidating atmosphere. And you speak to most West Ham fans and they'd say if you offered them the chance to go back to Upton Park, they'd do it in a heartbeat. So for this stadium to now be a key positive driving factor towards them potentially avoiding relegation is an incredible turnaround.
It's something we never thought we'd see, and I think longer term, Daniel Levy's point still stands really. You know, we go to cover games at the London Stadium and it can be soulless, but what they've done is belatedly they've embraced this fight, and it's almost in the face of adversity. Perhaps this is an isolated case of those in the stands and those on the pitch feeding off each other, and by the time next season comes around, that flatness and that soullessness will return. But certainly for now, the London Stadium is a strength. And you looked yesterday, Axel Disasi clearing balls and, you know, rallying the crowd and putting his body on the line in the penalty area. Callum Wilson speaking as well afterwards. His match of the day interview was brilliant about that inspiration they're taking from the supporters. So West Ham have got that positive momentum now. You look at a player like Disasi, how Chelsea could do with him. You look at a player like Callum Wilson, if he'd have been across London up front for Newcastle yesterday, Newcastle probably would have got points and knocked Arsenal off top. So yeah, everything about West Ham, 7 points and 9, I think it is now, and Nuno changing what seemed like, you know, Dom touched on it there. You go back to January, February, West Ham were among the dead men, really. They look and feel and smell and sound like a team who are going to stay up.
You mentioned Callum Wilson there. You obviously watched him a lot when he was at Newcastle United. This is a player who West Ham United were about to get rid of in January.
Yeah.
And yet, when push comes to shove at the end of the season, if West Ham United do stay up, they might look back on two of his most important goals, not just in his career, but in the recent history of West Ham United. Stoppage time winner at Tottenham Hotspur, and then a stoppage time winner against Everton yesterday. Yeah,
I was there that day, and I've known Callum for a lot of years, and what I love about him is his absolute belief in himself. Callum will still believe he's going to go to the World Cup. He really will. He won't have holidays booked for this summer. Part of his mind will be backing himself to go as that backup to Harry Kane. And listen, goodness, you know, not too far away really when you look at the rivals. But Callum Wilson coming off the bench to get you a goal in that situation is exactly the type of player you need.
Burnley, Wolves gone. Who follows them?
I'm going to have to say Tottenham, I think.
Tottenham.
We can't really have this conversation like this and then say something else, can we?
Tottenham convinced of it.
Tottenham. Right. OK. So City are winning the league and Tottenham are going down. We've got that all on tape.